Hope you guys enjoyed lunch and Mike and Dave's inspirational journey with the 10, 10, and 10. For those of you who don't know me, my name is AbaData. I'm Chief Operating Officer at AbaData. It's been great to see all the collaboration today. I hope you guys have had a chance to mingle and chat to other users, because that's really what this conference is all about. Our next breakout session focuses on one of the most technically advanced and mission-critical areas of our platform, which is pipeline integrity and risk management. And presenting today is Jeremy Rushton, one of our newly minted Director of Strategic Partnership, that's his title, who joined AbaData following the acquisition of his company, HUDU Pipelines. And Conan Farrell, our Director of Technical Solutions. Conan is a professional engineer who has spent nearly 20 years in pipeline integrity, and by all accounts, he's an expert in the subject, who's now leading our technical team on how to leverage big data so our clients can effectively manage risk and maintain compliance. If you guys were in the other session with Jeremy, some of you may know we did acquire HUDU Pipelines a few months ago to strengthen our ecosystem of risk and equipment management technologies. We couldn't be more excited to have him join our team and help close the gap between field operations, pipeline integrity, and asset management. So today they're going to be exploring how AbaData's integrity tools are currently being applied in the field, and also a look ahead as to how we're going to be integrating the HUDU technology into AbaData's suite of products. I'll hand it over to these guys now.
Perfect. All right, thanks very much, Amit. Thanks very much for joining us today. Appreciate so many people coming here to talk about pipeline integrity and risk management. Admittedly, Jeremy and I were not sure how many people would be showing up to this. Also appreciate those of you that probably tried to get into AI and it was full, and now you've come in here. So thanks for joining us. All right, just a quick overview of what we're going to do for the presentation today. Amit's already done the introductions, so we can skip that. We're going to do just kind of really high level, just to kind of set the stage. We're going to talk about pipeline integrity a little bit and risk management. And then we're going to kind of dive into a little bit of where we are now. So where we are with TRIAGE, where we are with HUDU, and then we're going to take a look at where we're trying to go with the two of them. As Amit said, we're really excited about bringing these two platforms together. There's a lot of potential. There's a lot of great stuff in both of them, and I think the potential of bringing them two together is really excellent. All right, so actually before we do this, maybe a bit of a quick question. How many people here are familiar with TRIAGE at all? You got a few people and some people familiar. Mostly AbaData, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And are there any people here that are familiar with HUDU? Okay, perfect. So we've got a good mix. So we're going to try and make sure we've got everything covered for everybody here. So I'll throw it over to you. Yeah.
Okay, so, and pipeline integrity. Do we have mostly pipeline integrity professional people? Yeah, we've got lots of. This next part is like not the most exciting topic to talk about, but it's important. When we're talking about integrity programs and risk management and all those pieces, it's important to understand why we're doing those things, right? So we've got mitigation programs where we use chemical, we use pigging, cathodic protection, depending on how we want to protect our pipeline. So we put all those, and those are called mitigation programs. And then we got monitoring programs to help us to understand what type of mitigation programs to put in place. So in our monitoring programs, we might check our water for bacteria or whatever it is. And then we also are going to do cathodic protection surveys and all these other pieces. So we're pigging our lines, we're cleaning them out, we're protecting them, we're monitoring to see what type of mitigation we got, and then we got to do inspections. And so the inspections part is what wraps it all together to make sure that what programs we have in place are doing what we want it to do. Because if we put a program in place and we think we're pigging it enough, we think that we're mitigating that bacteria enough, or whatever those problems are, we start doing inspections and we're seeing corrosion where we didn't think we were going to have corrosion. It kind of surprises us, since we got to look at the whole big picture and learn from what we're finding and everything again. So that's what we're talking about. So then all of that, we should be able to use all those different pieces with risk, right? So we should be able to take our mitigation programs, we should be able to take our monitoring programs and the data that we're gathering from the fields and then learn from it. And then inspect our pipelines and do an ILIs and borescopes and pressure tests or however it is, and then take that data and then also feed it into the tools and then get some pretty smart risk assessments. The hardest part with doing risk assessments and everything is gathering the data. And we talked about it, anybody that was in my last one as well with equipment management, but if you can get the data accurately, you get your operating conditions accurately, your pressures and temperatures, and you understand, sometimes we're gonna look at our lines and we're gonna be like, okay, well, this whole area has this for CO2 or H2S or this for bacteria. And you can get a pretty good risk assessment, but when we start to drill down and we start to actually do inspections and monitoring closer into what we're looking at, like on this one pipeline or this one well, and start to fine tune the pieces, then we can get a smarter tool. So I'm gonna pass this back over to Con to talk about that.
Yeah, so I've spent quite a bit of my time in pipeline integrity. I used to work for a midstream company called Trans Mountain. One of the things that never really occurred to me fully, I think, with pipeline integrity until I got to AbaData and started kind of thinking of things a little bit differently or looking through a different lens, is that a lot of the traditional methods and whatnot when it comes to pipeline integrity, you're looking at things that have already happened. Like often you've got failures, well, I shouldn't say often. When you have failures, you have big incident investigations, and you're trying to figure out what happened. What caused that? Is there corrosion? Even when you're, like, we would run smart tools all the time at Trans Mountain, and you're looking and often trying to find damage that has already occurred. It's a pre-existing condition. There's already corrosion in the pipeline, or there's something that's wrong with this well. So it's kind of a funny analogy, but somebody put it to us that it's like driving a car with the windshield duct tape, and you're looking in your rear view mirror to try and guide where you're going. Like it is very much, in many ways, kind of a reactive way of doing it. So one of the big challenges is how do we shift from sort of this reactive approach to something that's a little bit more proactive in nature? Like, can we predict where we're gonna have some potential issues? Can we try and get ahead of the curve and figure out, hey, we need to pay more attention to these areas, to these pipelines, where's our risk, that sort of thing.
See? I did that. That's AI. That picture right there. I did a breakdancing video for my kids this weekend, and it was super fun. You can use AI for anything. So we're gonna get into AI in a second. So I just poked AI because they're learning a lot about that. You can do it for breakdancing. I even tried to do a backflip, a video on a backflip, but I didn't. I'm gonna go with that picture. So when we're doing this, when we're talking about, so now we've talked about risk. We've looked behind us. We're trying to be proactive, not reactive. When we talk about regulations and everything, we're talking about our programs now. We're talking about our PIM and our POM. And so we need to start detailing what we're doing. So we need to have a standard approach and be able to explain that to the regulator when we get audited. Because there's tons of audits that are going through. So we have, and we'll learn it, and Con's going to talk about it in a second, our risk matrix and customizable and all these pieces. We need to have that in our manuals. We need to be able to say how we're actually looking for hazard identification, hazards in our manuals, and how we're doing our risks. And so having our standard risk assessment or a risk assessment that can point out the pieces that we need to look at is very important, and we need to detail that in our manuals. That takes us into our other program. The other pieces that we're getting audited on is our safety loss management system. These are keywords that we know in the integrity world and operations because they're getting drilled into us by the AER and BCR and stuff out of our programs. So we've got our umbrella, which is our safety loss management system. We've got our PIM and our POM, which fit underneath it. And so these are just pieces of our safety loss. Then you got environmental, and you got safety and some other pieces as well. But the risk assessment is a huge piece of our program, but it's not the only piece of it.
But thanks, Jeremy. So yeah, really, it's all about trying to manage this shift towards more risk-based decisions. And I'll be the first to admit, when I started digging into risk, people would say, like, do you really understand risk? It's like, hey, I understand risk. And when I started digging into it more, especially in terms of pipeline integrity, there is a lot to it. There's so much to it. And I think even the state, there's still, it's a little bit misunderstood. So there's so many sources of data that are now available, right? Like that's the nice thing. We've got all this data, but then it's trying to harness this and figure out how are we going to use this? Like we've collected this data, how do we use it in a meaningful way? And so that's where we can use that to really drive these risk-based decisions. And before doing that though, we also need to make sure we've got a good understanding of what risk really is. And really, it's that relationship between likelihood and consequence. So when you look at a risk score, what is driving that risk? Is it actually the likelihood, or is it consequence? You may have a pipeline that has a really low likelihood of failure. However, it might be in a densely populated area. It might have several river crossings to it. So really understanding what's driving a particular risk score can really help you hone in on the proper mitigation methods. So TRIAGE, what is it? Essentially, it's our pipeline integrity risk assessment tool, and it's all part of the AbaData ecosystem. Most people are probably familiar with AbaData Maps 3.0, so we've been trying to add more functionality to AbaData. So TRIAGE is one of the big pieces of here, and it's meant to be part of the ecosystem. It feeds off of maps, it feeds off of field ops, and it all is one big loop. So hopefully, people that are familiar with AbaData, we're adding more functionality to the tool. One nice thing about it as well is it leverages our connectivity model to validate flow paths and input flow apportionment values. So really what that is trying to figure out what's going in the pipeline. To really look at pipeline integrity, we need to be able to figure out exactly what's going through there, and tracing and connecting the dots of going from wells to pipelines, pipelines to pipelines, and pipelines to facilities. So that's what our connectivity module is doing. It's making sure we're tracing the right dots, connecting the right dots so that we know what's actually in the pipeline at any time. Pardon me. And as we mentioned, as part of the ecosystem, there's an ability to incorporate information directly from field ops and other modules. So hopefully they're each feeding each other. Our clients don't need to worry about handling that data themselves. As soon as it comes into the system, everything just feeds naturally. So these next few slides, I'm just gonna set the stage really quickly. I'm gonna blast through these fairly fast. There'll be a few screenshots here. I just wanna point out a few things within TRIAGE, and then I'm gonna jump in and do a little bit of a demo just to kind of show you how it works. So in AbaData Maps, you can filter the risk assessments and the colors and change them to represent the risk score. So if you go in there right now, you'll see it based on commodity. So if it's natural gas, if it's oil, whatever, it'll be a different color. There's the ability to go in there, get a really quick view based on risk. From there, you can click on any pipeline that you see, and you'll see a risk score on there. As you can see, there's different tabs above. You can hop onto the engineering assessment one. It'll give you that nice visual of a 5x5. You can kind of hop through the internal corrosion, external corrosion, that sort of thing. I apologize, it's pretty small. But yeah, so a little preview there. And within there, as I mentioned, there's separate risk assessments for internal corrosion, external corrosion. You've also got your geohazards, your hill slope, and then we do scores for non-metallic pipelines as well. One of the nice visuals that you'll see in one of the reports is your ability to see where an individual line falls within an entire company's inventory. So within that 5x5, okay, I might be up in this area. Where does that compare with the rest of my pipelines? Because really being able to see relative to your company, is this one of my highest risk ones? Where does this fall? And then there's a whole bunch of detailed reports available too. I won't dive into all of them, I promise. I'm just gonna flash something just to give you guys an idea of the different reports that you can go into and take a closer look. And then we've also got mitigation recommendations in there as well. Do I need to look at pigging? Do I need to look at maybe some batching? So there's some suggestions in there as well that hopefully will prove helpful. All right. So here's AbaData Maps. Hopefully everybody's fairly comfortable with this. Lots of different filters. If we go up here under the map display, right under pipelines, right here. So if I click there, it might be hard to see if I close this here. You can see the colors have turned now. I've got my green representing low risk. I've got my yellow, moderate, and red for high risk. So it gives you kind of a nice visual. Let's you poke around, see if you want to take a little closer look at some on there. Within there, you can also go in, and take a look at external corrosion as well. As I mentioned, you can go in, click on any particular pipeline, and then you kind of get this one pager here. So along the tabs, engineering assessment right at the top here, and there's that visual we looked at. This is just kind of your public data here. This gives you an idea of what everything is based on in terms of our calculations. Now, if you come here and click this report button, you'll get the following. So this is specific to this pipeline. You can come in here, some of your operating conditions are visible, a little bit of a visual in terms of where it stands. Pipeline license data, operating conditions, and then we start getting into the good stuff. So first page you'll see, this is for a steel pipeline, is internal corrosion. So at the top, what you'll see right in the middle, this will represent the pipeline that you're currently looking at, and it gives you that visual as to whether there have been any internal corrosion failures in neighboring townships. Below that, we've got internal corrosion failures based on year, and the internal corrosion failures based on year of construction as well. From there, and I won't go into all these details, I promise. This will give you a snapshot of what's really driving that internal corrosion score. So the top, you've got likelihood subscore A, fluid properties and water film transport severity. So that's looking at inclination angles, oil water separation, that kind of stuff. That's your step one. When you get to step 2 and step 3, that's something that's unique to triage, and I'll touch on briefly afterwards. That's looking at the impact of your upstream wells and and their behavior, the characteristics of those sorts of things. So it all blends together to give you a score, a likelihood score at the bottom. From there, this is one of those visuals I was mentioning. This is where this particular line falls within the entire company's inventory of pipelines. So as you can see here, we're at 2-4. Sorry, I don't know if you can see the folding there. Just a nice visual to see. Is this one of my high risk ones? Where am I at? From there, the mitigation recommendations that we touched on, and then we do it all again for external corrosion. So in terms of some of the reporting that's available, in terms of more detailed reports, up here under reports, if you click under this EA here, these are the very detailed reports that are provided. We've got internal corrosion, external corrosion, mitigation recommendations. We've also got the non-metallics if that's applicable, hill slope, geohazards, failure consequence, corrosion management. The last one, or second last one, sorry, is your data validation form. So nothing in triage is meant to be hidden. We want to be completely open about what's being used to drive these risk scores. So the data validation form is an opportunity to see all the inputs that went into our calculations. There's also the opportunity there for any of the users to go and override any of the defaults. So you can see what we've used. If we need to make any changes, that's an opportunity to do that. And then at the end, you've got your summary and risk roll-up. And one thing I forgot to point out quickly is you can do this basically not just per pipeline. If you want, you can go in, you can highlight a series of pipelines, and then run the report specific to those pipelines. You can do an entire company's inventory, you can look at a single pipeline on its own, or you can do a specific selection. So triage, what makes it unique? One of the big things for us that we're really excited about is considering the impact of those upstream wells on pipeline integrity, including the well operation behavior. It's the old adage, you are what you eat, right? So what is going down that pipeline? And it's not just what's going down there, but if we're looking at upstream wells, if there's a possibility that those wells get shut down for a while and then they start up again, there's a chance for a lot of sludge to build up. Does that sludge, is that going to get mobilized? Is that going to go down the pipeline? How is that going to affect the pipeline integrity? So that's one of the pieces in terms of the upstream well. To try and look at the impact of that, we've used data pattern analysis, looking back at historical failure data, trying to combine all that stuff to identify wells that have had failures, to take a look at their other wells with similar operating conditions that maybe we need to be looking at. So there's a lot that goes into it, which is why we're running a machine learning model to do a lot of that work. It's an incredible amount of data, and trying to parse through that and really connect those dots is a ton of work. So that's where we're using machine learning to help us with that. And the last point is, this is a live risk assessment, right? It's constantly being updated based on changing conditions. So every month we get new regulator data. We're looking for failures. Are there new failures? What are the characteristics of those pipelines, those wells? And then we're taking a look to see if there's other ones. So it's constantly changing. If we've got live data coming directly from producers, that's getting fed into it. So it is constantly being updated. This is a visual that you're not meant to be able to see very well, but in terms of what goes into it, it's a lot. It's like, this is, I asked one of our developers to stamp a few screenshots here of some of the code. I don't understand the code, but there is a lot that goes in there. So it's taking that kind of pipeline integrity and engineering know-how and then trying to put it into the code. There's a ton that goes into it. So, all right, I'll throw it over to Jeremy. He'll run us through HUDU for a little bit.
Okay, so HUDU, there's a lot. We started building HUDU back in, the idea came probably in 2017. Actually, Terry Brown right here in the front. We were both managing clients, and we were talking, and Terry started to develop his like a database for himself to be able to manage pressure equipment. And I was like, how are you doing that? Like, and he was starting to play and dabble and stuff, and I was like, what if I could do that with pipelines? And very quickly I realized I'm not smart enough to do that. And so Terry's like, you should just really hire somebody. And so I did that. And so in 2018 we hired our first developer, and then we started to build HUDU. And at the time, I was consulting, had some consultants, and we were managing people's integrity programs. And one of those was pen growth. And so while we were working in the companies and managing their infrastructure, their pipeline infrastructure, we needed to be able to understand risk a lot more. So we built it from the field and just we needed it to be easy. We needed to be able to get the data into it and be able to use it effectively so that we could give risk assessments on it and stuff. And so that's where HUDU started. And actually at the very beginning, back in 2018, we partnered with AbaData at that time. And so AbaData, we were pulling consequence data from AbaData, so water crossings and rail and roads and all of that information. And then we were pushing back to AbaData all of the operating conditions, your pressures and temperatures and all those pieces. So within HUDU, we gave them an interface. We created an interface to be able to make those changes very simply. And then from there, working like with Conan and some other companies and Card and different ones, we started to develop a user interface to be able to pull all that data into one spot so that we could understand risk a little bit more. So we started to develop a one-pager. And I just got a pipeline up here. This is on staging. So as you can see up here, so this isn't live. So we're not like, Card's like, why are you looking at one of my pipelines? I changed a bunch of stuff, and so you're gonna see my name in different things. So this is, it says Card, but it's different. So we made it so that we could change it to actuals. So we wanted to be able to have a spot. So everything that's blue, you could change it. It's like, this pipeline is actually a dead leg, or it's out of service, or it goes from this location to this location and the licensing is incorrect. So this is where we would change the actual operating conditions, how we're actually managing them in the field when it's compared to the regulatory data, and create those mismatches. So, and every single time that one of these changes, it will changes the risk of it as well. An out-of-service pipeline is a higher risk than like a shut-in pipeline that still has all the product in it and everything, is a higher risk than a pipeline that's flowing and getting displaced and stuff. So that was the first part. And then we tailor our risk assessments per client as well. So based off of the risk matrix, we look and see where consequence and everything aligns and make sure that they align with ours, and we can do 5x5, 4x4s. And then off of these dollar values, everything, all of our consequence, just like right here, gets rolled up into one consequence number. So these three things, product loss, cleanup cost, and repair cost, all added together are gonna give you a total cost, which is compared, like what Conan was saying, with the likelihood of failure. So the consequence of failure, likelihood of failure. And we've got both of those on the mitigated side and unmitigated. So when we're looking, we take our mitigation side and we just set that, we just push that over. And we're like, we're not gonna look at the pigging first, we're not gonna look and see what we're actually doing to mitigate that pipeline. First, we wanna understand what's our unmitigated risk score, which is super important because we don't know if we're managing that pipeline effectively. So we need to look at that unmitigated score first. So back to risk. So the way that HUDU is set up, we've got our calculated risk first, which is off of your CO2s and H2Ss and all those pieces. So then we calculate a corrosion rate. And then if we have corrosion coupon data, so we have a coupon out in the field that's given us a corrosion rate, we'll use that next. And it overrides that first calculated. And then the third way is at inspection data. So if we have ILI data, which takes into account the wall loss and we've got corrosion over here, then we'll use that because that's the most representative of that pipeline. So that's how our risk looks within HUDU. One of the important parts is this piece right here. So in your programs, we talked about a PIM and POM before. We've got key performance indicators to make sure that we're doing what we say we're doing and we're looking at our programs and managing them effectively. We've also, one piece that we've heard from a number of operators, and we get audited on it quite a bit, is what is our risk management process? And when we go into an audit, what they're looking for, the AER and BCR and regulators, they're looking to make sure that we've detailed in our manuals that if I have a high risk pipeline, this is what I'm going to do with it. I'm going to get this sign off from this level, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to shut it in until this, and whatever you say in your manual is what you need to do. So we just give a spot to be able to create tasks on it and to be able to get those approvals if they're needed for your program. And then consequence data, pulling in and saying you've got this many water crossings, rail and road, and this is how far it is away. Is it actually a water crossing? Is it a sensitive area? You give a whole bunch of different attributes to be able to elevate or decrease the risk on a pipeline. I won't go into all of these because we're running time. We can talk about this forever. Then the other part on that's important with the pipeline risk assessment on the probability or likelihood side is to be able to, here's a whole bunch of probabilities that we take into account when we're doing a risk. So we've got our internal corrosion, external corrosion, third-party damage, stress corrosion cracking. We built under insulation corrosion and stress corrosion cracking under insulation, non-steel, so non-metallics, incorrect operation, construction, manufacturing, equipment, and weather, or landslide and different pieces. So all of those need to be taken into account. But the important part is, like when you guys hear about a risk assessment, you don't want one to shield another one, right? And so you don't want just because you have high internal corrosion, you might still have high third-party probability of failure, right? Because you're close to a populated area, or you're only doing your one calls not as frequently, however much. We can change a whole bunch of stuff in HUDU, but so you don't want that to shield. So what's important is right here we've got drivers. So what's important in a risk assessment? You get your risk and you need to understand what your drivers are. This one I changed some stuff in it. So we've got stress corrosion cracking as a driver. and we've got internal corrosion. So both of those are marked as high risk, and we need to go look at each of them on this line. And then we just pull into here the mitigation and monitoring programs. We use that with our risk. Are we doing them as often as our programs say we're doing them? Cathodic protection and everything. Our operating conditions, we take and you should be using your flow going through the pipeline and all those pieces. Corrosion coupons, crossings, incidents, if you have any, they should affect your risk as well. Any mismatches, so we identify, we talked about before, if you do have a mismatch, then depending on what it is, it might affect your risk. Also, the important part when you're looking at tools is you might have a steel pipeline or a non-metallic pipeline, let's say, so a fiberglass line or a composite line, but you might also have a valve that's a steel valve or a steel spool in the middle of that line. And so you still need to be taking into consideration your internal corrosion, external corrosion, and those other probabilities of failure for that material. And so this one, like I'm showing here, I added a valve in the middle of the line just to show you that. Inspections, like we talked about, that should also play into the whole big picture on there. As you're doing an ILI, take credit for it and learn from it, because you might do an ILI tomorrow and your pipeline is 5 years old, but that corrosion might be, you might have a 15% wall loss or something like that, which actually might be quite bad because your pipeline is only 5 years, and so you should start to be able to use your data. Right-of-way inspections, data, leak detection. So I guess the biggest thing what we're showing with the new, you want to be able to see, you see everything in a shot of where your risks are, which is going to lead us into our next piece here. Let's go back into the presentation. The old things that earned. So, I think I hit this one, right, Con? This
Yeah.
one? Okay. The development of a dashboard. So this is the exciting part. We're taking two. So AbaData is underneath HUDU's underneath the AbaData ceiling now. And so we are able to take the best of both worlds and put them into one. Instead of taking one and feeling like one is like way better than the other one, we're not going to try and mold one into the other one because it's going to be fun. We say fun. Like we get excited when we do stuff. And so it's going to be fun to detail that and figure out what we like on each. And we've already started this whole process and saying, like what Con put over, the well information using the well data, what was the characteristics of that well, when we had a pipeline failure, and learning from that. And then the HUDU side, where we have all the different types of probabilities of failure, a nice dashboard so that we can see, kind of get a nice story of it. And that's where the end goal, so dream with me for a second. So the end goal is to be able to have a nice dashboard where you can pull up a pipeline, and that's a moderate risk pipeline, let's say, just like the line we were at before. You should be able to have a nice little story. This pipeline is moderate risk because you have an elevated temperature over here, and pressure is this, your mitigation program isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing, and have a nice story. And so when we can detail, instead of trying to come in on the top and saying, and pull those little pieces out from that risk model, when you can develop it like what we're going to be doing from the bottom, we can start to do machine learning and AI and stuff so that we can pull the pieces out that we need to look at.
For sure. And, speaking to the last bullet on here, one of the things is like we feel we've got two great tools that we're trying to blend into a really, really good one. And as part of that it's really customizing those results and working with every client to really make sure that you're seeing meaningful results. Like every company has a different set of risks, like defines risks differently in terms of what's low risk, moderate, high, all that kind of stuff. So really taking that next step of saying, okay, let's make sure this works for you. And it might be something as simple as, like, we present risk right now in a 5x5. Some companies, maybe they do a 4x4 or a 5x4, that sort of thing. Even when we look at the distribution of results right now, This is not what triage is currently. Triage has this row of red here, but this is something that we've talked about. Is that too much red? Is that too much high? So just an example of some of the sorts of things that completely customizable and making sure that we're working with triage users to really get this dialed in and make sure people are getting the most out of this tool. So as Jeremy said, one of the big things that we really want to hit on is there's so much involved in risk. There's so much that you're trying to boil into these scores. And so how do we make this simple, right? And one of the big things there is highlighting what is driving the risk score for every pipeline. We want you to be able to go in and for it to be nice and easy to see, this is what's driving the risk score for this. It's likelihood, it's consequence, and it's likelihood because of this or consequence beyond because of that. In the background, we'll have all the details there. You can dive into as much of the detail as you want, but really being able to show that and simplifying how we display some of that.
Then the last piece is how do we use it? And so within our compliance packages, we're looking at, because every single company is a little bit different, what we need. We got small companies that we manage everything and we're trying to use a limited number of people and all these things. So we're coming up with a compliance package like it talks about here, which would be across all this suite of products within AbaData, you're gonna get all of the pieces that you need to be able to pass an audit, right? And so coming into an audit, it's super important that that program is also very tailored with and speaks together with your integrity management programs, your manuals and stuff. And so helping you be able to do that and us updating and changing our risk matrices and because some companies, and one other, like just a real life example, like in some parts of our area, we might have some non-metallics or nickel coated fittings that we need to elevate the risk on in this part of this field. And so it's super important to be able to have a customizable product where we can learn from in each of those pieces. So audit ready. Oh, shoot, I'm supposed to do that. Okay. Don't worry about that because Conan's going to talk about that in a second. So, like when we're talking about baseball, I hate big pipelines right now. So we'll talk about pipelines, or sorry, this in a second. So we get back to what we're trying to do, and we're creating a working group within with our current clients and stuff to be able to understand what your guys' stresses are right now, because as we build this product, we've got a vision of it and what we'd like to see within it, but getting great feedback from you guys and how you use the tool. One of those feedbacks, Chad Conan, we're going through it right now. It's like, you've got a driver, well, how the heck did you get that driver? Like, this is internal corrosion, and why is it internal corrosion? And so in triage, like what Con had, there was a huge, there was a ton of information in that one sheet, right? When you pull out reports, which is nice. You want to be able to dig into it and figure out why your risk is like that, but it needs to be way simpler than that. And so that's what we're going to be supplying. I'm done talking.
That's good. Sorry, we realize we've just absolutely firehosed everybody here with a lot of technical information. I feel it was a good move to go to this. We'll bring you back with the Blue Jays, and then I promise I'll just finish off quickly. But like Jeremy touched on, one of the things we're working on, and that was that last bullet, was kind of coming up with a compliance-driven package. And so when we talk about that AbaData ecosystem, here's triage, here's field ops, some of the basics, some of the core, and something that will tee everything up nice and easy. So it's audit ready, it's compliance driven, that sort of thing. Especially for smaller companies that may not have as many pipelines, here's something we're going to try and make it nice and easy, and then we can scale from there. So we've thrown a lot at you. I apologize. I know we've gone pretty quick through some of it, but I didn't want to put everybody to sleep, and we want to cover. So we'll open it up to questions. Honestly, we welcome everybody's feedback at any time. This is a tool, especially right now, it's such a good opportunity for us to integrate feedback. Hey, this is, what would be really handy for us if we could see something like that. Ideal time. So if anybody has any questions specific to triage, specific to HUDU in terms of what it is now or where we're going with it, please fire away.
We've worked with Jeremy Watts with the last number of years. like Jeremy said, it's hard to really understand what driving something called the likelihood of different building you got a screenshot out there, obviously your algorithm is extremely complex. So if you guys ever like, I've always been curious. If you take put it in a tree route and put it down, put it in the pool, other than also for failure likelihood.
No, it's kind of part of the process in terms of trying to identify, okay, where do we maybe need to build out triage a little more. We've got good, here's the good bones in HUDU for this part, here's the good bones in triage for this part. It's funny because it's not an exact science too, right? Like there's so much, everybody's gonna have a different opinion. Like even when you talk about the mitigation, okay, if we're doing pigging monthly or we're doing pigging, whatever. Different operators will have a different opinion on how much that's mitigating risk, right? So, when we talk about really wanting to work with clients on like having those discussions, figuring out, okay, where our strengths are, and we want to like operator input too. Like one of the things I was a bit hesitant on, when I came and I learned about triage, we're making mitigation recommendations, all that sort of thing is making sure we're not overstepping. We want to provide a tool that has a lot of good information here, but we need to really understand the operations of every single operator, right? So when we can start feeding it some of that data, like through field ops and that kind of stuff, it becomes a stronger tool. But sort of circling back to your question, that's part of the process of bringing these two together, right? Is identifying the strengths between them and then kind of blending them both.
Do you think those like the finished product will be sort of how functionality or just define what some of their parts are?
That's what we'd like to do. Like I think one of the things that we talked about internally, even before HUDU, was like going back to the mitigation. How much impact does this have, right? And I think that's a tool or something we're giving, the ability to see, okay, if this is 20%, how is that driving the score down? And then what if it's 30%? And it's kind of a slippery slope. You don't want to look like you're fudging the numbers or, kind of retroactively trying to bring risk scores down or anything like that. But that's the thing is everybody does look at it differently. So there's a lot of work to really fine tuning it. I think everybody's going to be different. So
I work directly out in the field with operators and just recently started using AbaData triage more time there. One of the questions operators asked, yes, if we're doing what they're asking, we're mitigating, we're paying what you're asking us to, does it change our risk score and how do they see that we're actually see it down?
That's where that next step, if that's gonna do that. In HUDU, we do that for sure. And so if you're not pigging, so you have a pigging frequency of 30 days. If you're pigging it and you're 15 days over, so you're 50%, then your mitigated score drops by X amount. Okay, so you can actually watch your mitigated score drop. That goes for pigging or for chemical or for liner vent checks. And so if you have an internal liner and you're not doing your checks, then there's all of that stuff. So yeah, for sure.
Will that be field observing or do you use outside sources to feed into that?
We're not trying to.
Yeah,
you have to use everything, not with like at all. But like to your point, that's one thing where currently in triage, we've got a little bit in terms of displaying the impacts of the mitigation. So when the first time I said, can you kind of show me a little bit of HUDU? That was honestly one of the things I was quite excited about. I was like, this is where we're trying to go. I think so this is where we need to go. So it's perfect. We kind of got a bit of a roadmap here to work.
I have a question about the mapping. Are you able to overlay high voltage transmission lines in the mapping to show those big corridors? So make sure you program
I think we do that later.
Yeah. So there's actually some things that we're working on that we're not using quite yet, and that is one of them because then that'll, for sure, that'll help. External corrosion is on this far from that shielding whatever it is. That is something we're doing. Yeah. Totally. We have the data and now we're just going to start using it. Yeah, totally.
Sorry, it's 1:45, just to let everybody know I apologize. Come find us anytime, Jim, anytime, we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much for coming.